and welcome. May I remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live via the internet and recorded, archived for future viewing. Which takes us on to part one of tonight's agenda. Do we have any apologies for absence? Agenda item 2A, to hear the roll call of members and to receive declarations of interest under the Council's Code of Conduct.
Councillor Julie Aviett. Councillor Vincent Bailey. Councillor Rhiannon Birch. Councillor Jonathan Bird. Councillor Bronwyn Brooks. Councillor Liz Burnett. Councillor George Carroll. Councillor Christine Cave. Councillor Janice Charles.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Millie Collins.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Jeff Cox.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Robert Crowley.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Pamela Drake. Councillor Vince Driscoll. Councillor Stuart Edwards. Councillor Ben Gray. Councillor Owen Griffiths. Councillor Stephen Griffiths. Councillor Sally Hanks. Councillor Nick Hodges. Councillor Hunter Jarvie. Councillor Gwyn John. Councillor Ian Johnson. Councillor Gordon Kemp.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Peter King.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Matthew Lloyd. Councillor Kevin Marnie. Councillor Catherine McCaffer. Councillor Neil Moore. Councillor Michael Morgan. Councillor Jane Norman. Councillor Rachel Nugent-Finn. Councillor Andrew Parker.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Bob Penrose.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Sandra Perks. Councillor Andrew Robertson. Councillor Leighton Rowlands.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Ruba Sivanyanam. Councillor John Thomas. Councillor Neil Thomas. Councillor Stefan William. Councillor Margaret Wilkinson. Councillor Eddie Williams. Councillor Mark Wilson. Councillor Margarita Wright.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 3, which is to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of February 2018. Thank you. And also the special meeting held on the 28th of March 2018.
Second, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 4, to receive any announcements from the Mayor or Leader or members of the Cabinet. There are none this evening, so we're moving on to agenda item 5.
Madam Mayor.
Petitions.
Madam Mayor, I wish to present a petition from people who are opposed to the proposals for Llancarvan School. This is a petition that contains 1,915 signatures at present. There's also an online petition which either details of that have been given or will be given to the appropriate officers. Can I, in presenting this, make it clear that I am not expressing a view either in favour or against the proposals that this petition relates to? I will make my mind in due course when I've considered all the issues, and then as I say, make my decision accordingly. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You have another.
I have another
one here,
petition.
please.
I have a petition on behalf of young people in the Vale, Save the Vale Youth Service petition I'd like to present.
Thank you both very much. Moving on to agenda item 5, which is the report of the monitoring officer, the review of the council's constitution. Councillor Jarvie.
Madam Mayor.
This report seeks to approve a number of changes to the officer delegations contained in the council's constitution, relating primarily to the head of regeneration and planning and the operational manager of regeneration, with one delegation transferring to the Director of Environment and Housing Services as detailed at Appendix A of this report. In summary, the proposed changes relate to a previous resolution of Cabinet, a previous Managing Director's emergency power decision, deleting 10 delegations which are no longer relevant, introducing a new delegation to grant authority to the Head of Regeneration and Planning and Operational Manager Regeneration to manage and determine applications for lettings of the commercial storage units at the Glamorgan Heritage Coast Centre in Southerndown, and transferring delegated authority to negotiate and agree terms with the trustees of the Dunraven Estate regarding the management of the Kimler car park to the Director of Environment and Housing Services. And so I recommend that the changes to officer delegations set out in Appendix A to the report be approved and that the Council's constitution be amended accordingly. And I so move, Madam Mayor.
I second that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
All in favour?
All in favour? Thank you. So moved. Moving on to agenda item 6, which is to consider the following proposals from the Executive in relation to the Council's policy framework and budget. Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members will be aware that all commercial properties were revalued revalued in the financial year 2017-18. For some businesses, the impact on the amount payable on their non-domestic rates was considerable. To alleviate this, Welsh Government introduced a rate relief scheme for 2017-18, which gave some financial assistance to high street businesses. We've been notified that Welsh Government extended the support for 2018-19, and the amount available is half of that of the previous year. Cabinet have agreed the report and the use of the urgency procedure, but as it is a change to the policy framework and budget, the report needs Council agreement. I move the recommendations within the report.
And I second those, Madam Mayor.
All agreed? Councillor Ian Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, the Leader, for that report. As the representative of a town centre, Barry Town Centre, I'm very disappointed that the Finance Cabinet Secretary, Mark Drakeford, who I'm told wishes to be the next First Minister of Wales, has implemented what is effectively a cut in the grant available to shopkeepers in our town centres. I'm very disappointed in that.
All in agreement? Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 7, to inform the Council of the use of the urgent decision procedure. It's just for noting. All in agreement? Thank you. Agenda item 8 is to receive the questions and answers pursuant to section 418.2 to 418.7 of the Council's Constitution, which is questions from members of the public. No, members of the Council first. Sorry, you're going to have to wait, I'm afraid. And the first question is to the Executive Leader and Cabinet Member for Performance and Resources from Councillor Mrs Wilkinson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson, for the question. The question is regarding modern slavery, and it is in the agendas before you. In response, it is important that the Council procures goods and services in a responsible way to ensure that there is no form of slavery in our supply chains. In this regard, a number of steps have been taken, which include: 1. The procurement policy and strategy has been updated to contain a clause on ethics to incorporate the crime of modern slavery and confirm our commitment to ensuring it is not in our supply chain or business. Our procurement documentation also includes questions about the actions bidders have taken or plan to take to tackle the risk of slavery in their business and supply chain. 2. Procurement staff have attained training organised by the Cardiff Partnership Board and Welsh Government. In addition, Cardiff and the Vale of Glamorgan as a region have allocated additional resources for coordinating anti-slavery training since 2013. There is a dedicated regional trainer for Cardiff and the Vale of Glamorgan who delivers first responder half-day awareness sessions and lunch and learn training sessions. The Regional Community Cohesion Coordinator supports the promotion of training at regional level. A range of frontline staff have attended the training, maximising awareness to cover the full range of services that may encounter a victim of trafficking. A 2016 Welsh Government evaluation noted that the region was the most effective, efficient and systematic in promoting and coordinating training. Internal training has also been provided to various council departments about slavery in general and how to address it in the procurement process. Training is ongoing and further contacts and dates will be arranged. 4. Key staff from the Vale of Glamorgan also attend the Regional Human Trafficking Group. The group meets quarterly and aims to facilitate engagement, partnership working, appropriate information sharing and shared learning between non-governmental organisations, police, local authorities and other public and third sector organisations on the issue of slavery across Wales and the UK. And 5. Regional MARACs, that's multi-agency risk assessment conferences, are convened monthly to agreed dates, but can also be held more frequently if a case requires urgent consideration. Information shared at the MARAC enables participating professionals to assess risk and establish a tailored multi-agency holistic support plan for each potential victim or survivor. The information may also facilitate the investigation of a slavery-related offence. From this, you will note that the Vale of Glamorgan Council is working effectively with partners on a regional basis.
Margaret Wilkinson.
Thank you for that answer, Leader. But I am concerned because all of a sudden we are having a lot of nail parlours, beauty parlours and car washes setting up, and some of them are in side streets, and I'm wondering what is happening. But I just want to know, have you had anybody investigated? Thank you.
Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. I haven't got an answer to that question. I will find out if there have been any investigations specific to the Vale of Glamorgan, and I will get back to you and copy all members into the to that answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 2 from Mrs. Margaret Wilkinson, Councillor Mrs. Margaret Wilkinson to the Leader. Leader.
Sorry. Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, Councillor Wilkinson. The question is on council tax exemption for care leavers. Thank you for the question. You will probably recall that a similar question was asked by Councillor Bailey at a previous meeting of this council, and I undertook then to bring a report to Cabinet for consideration. And I'm pleased to confirm the Cabinet will be considering a report to agree this exemption for care leavers at its meeting on the 30th of April, so that's the next Cabinet meeting. The report recommends providing this support for those care leavers who were supported by this council, are aged between 18 and 25 and live in the Vale of Glamorgan. And if approved, the report recommends that the award is backdated to the 1st of April 2018.
Supplementary question from Councillor Margaret Wilkinson.
Thank you for that answer, Leader. I am concerned about these. and I am pleased to see it's on the Cabinet report, because I was wondering how long it would take to get to the Cabinet, so I am pleased to see it's on. But will you ensure that all leavers between that age is informed that they can claim that and put in for it, please?
Yes, certainly will do.
Thank you. Question number 3 is from Councillor N.C. Thomas to the Cabinet Member for Regeneration and Planning.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. The adopted Vale of Glamorgan LDP 2011 to 2026 set out a time frame for meeting the identified long-term needs for authorised gypsy and traveller accommodation. It set a target to identify an appropriate site following consultation with the existing Hayes Road occupiers and to secure planning permission for the site and funding by May 2018. Since the initial successful meeting with existing occupiers in November 2016, it has been difficult to maintain regular contact despite repeated attempts. Therefore, the Council recently engaged Gypsy and Traveller Wales to act as mediators on our behalf, to engage with the group, which has proven more successful. It is now anticipated that the group will meet with the Council representatives in May 2018 to discuss their site and accommodation needs. The Gypsy and Traveller Project Board continues to meet regularly to maintain the momentum in delivering this project, to meet the Council's statutory obligations for the provision of Gypsy and Traveller accommodation. Once appropriate engagement with the current occupiers of Hayes Road has been undertaken, an update report will be presented to Cabinet before recess, which will consider the response of the travellers and identify options for progressing matters further.
Councillor Thomas.
Thank you for that, John. You told the Council on June 28th last year that a project board had been established with the aim of identifying and procuring a permanent site. This, I mean, it hasn't happened yet. It slipped a year. You've been in power a year. Has anything actually been achieved?
Yeah, please. No, unfortunately, we can't progress until we've made meaningful contact with the people. All our grant depends on it. We get no grant if we don't engage. We can't provide something that's not wanted. So, no, we haven't made any progress. We've been trying very, very hard. We've made numerous attempts to contact them. And as I say, we have actually got now a meeting. We've gone back to them with 4 dates in this coming month. And hopefully once we've got that engagement, we'll be able to decide on what they need and what is best to move this thing forward. So it's totally out of our hands. If we can't engage with the people, we can't move forward. We can't provide them with something that's not needed.
Thank you. Moving on to question 4, who is from Councillor Thomas to the Cabinet Member for Learning and Culture.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Thomas, for your question. There seems to be a false assumption that what is proposed is a cut to the youth service provision. This is not the case. I'm very aware of the positive role played by our youth services in reducing antisocial behaviour. That is why the proposed changes to the delivery model of youth services will not lead to a cut in the universal provision. The amount of youth work undertaken in all areas will be at least compatible with the current levels. The service will continue to be delivered by qualified professional youth workers. We are proposing changes to staff contracts to reduce the number of part-time posts. Currently, many youth workers have contracts for as little as 3 hours per week. The changes will see fewer posts, but these will be for more hours. In order to enhance the service, part of the proposal is to develop relationships with voluntary organisations and to support them to develop additional provision for young people in the Vale of Glamorgan. In addition, to ensure that this provision is at a high standard, the Council will develop partnership agreements or service level agreements with any group who wish to deliver services. there will be an expectation that volunteers supported by central services will be registered, qualified and DBS compliant.
Councillor Thomas.
Vulnerable young people experiencing major difficulties in their lives need qualified and sensitive support from well-trained professionals whom they can easily approach in their own time. Cutting the number of such qualified workers is in fact putting young people at serious risk. Does the Cabinet member understand that cutting what is quite a small amount in the scheme of things will potentially entail far greater future costs from youth justice, the NHS, children and adolescent mental health and other budgets that this council will be paying out of? You're saving pennies to lose pounds.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. I think most of the points you made there, apart from making a statement, were covered in my first answer, and that is that we're not cutting hours in front of the youth, and we are not cutting back at all. We're doing it as a different approach with a restructuring, and we're confident that the hours spent in front of the youth by our officers, assisted by voluntary bodies, will offer a better solution to the problem. At the moment, we spend a lot of time with our 3 and 4 hours a week that I alluded to in the answer before in recruitment, because these people are employed with us but then move on. So we spend more time interviewing the small hour staff, and such that moving to staff that have longer hours and are better qualified should prove beneficial to youth in general.
Thank you. Moving on to question number 5, which is from Councillor Julie Aviat to the Cabinet Member for the Neighbourhood Services and Transport.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Aviat, you can see you in the back now. The question's about aggressive gulls and gull nuisance. Gulls are protected under the Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981, are not classified as vermin. General licences are issued by the Welsh Government to allow measures to be taken against certain common species of birds on grounds which include the preservation of public health or public safety. Any action taken must be humane, and the use of any inhumane method which could cause suffering would be illegal. The use of poisons or drugs to take or kill any bird is specifically prohibited, except under very special circumstances and with a specific licence issued by Welsh Government. The list of birds against which humane methods may be used includes lesser black-backed and herring gulls. However, only the owner of a building or the occupier can take action against the gulls in it, or they can give someone else permission to act on their behalf. The herring gull may be perceived as aggressive in certain situations. They appear more threatening than they actually are, and this apparent aggressiveness is often seen in areas where food is regularly and freely available. Herring gulls are very competitive with fellow herring gulls for food, and for that reason may try and take food before it is thrown or discarded. For example, snatching food from a child's hand. You note in your question the nuisance particularly caused by gulls during the nesting period. Well, herring gulls may also naturally protect their nests or young by performing a series of swooping dives over an intruder. Rarely, if ever, does the herring gull actually make physical contact. Whilst a disconcerting experience, a raised arm will, in most cases, be sufficient to deter them. If gulls are fed regularly, it will create an artificially high population and encourage further breeding pairs to take residence in the area. A natural population level will be established only if the gulls are left to fend for themselves from natural food sources. The Council therefore strongly urges residents not to feed seagulls, as this will cause more harm in the long term and can also cause unnecessary annoyance to neighbours. The practice should also be discouraged because it also attracts rats. If members of the public are seen to be regularly feeding seagulls or other animals off their property, this can be reported to regulatory services, as this would be investigated from the perspective of possibly encouraging vermin. And further advice on seagulls is available for all to see on the Council's website.
Supplementary.
This issue is ruining many people's lives every year. In fact, there's a gentleman in the gallery who's been attacked, seriously attacked by the girls. Will you make a named officer available to visit residents who are badly affected and to look into possible solutions?
If you would supply me with a list of the badly affected areas, I would certainly make certain that officers could attend. But could I emphasise, part of the problem is people probably not recycling the food waste properly in the sealed containers. If they did that and there was no food waste put out in the black bags, that would avoid most of the nuisance.
Thank you. Moving on to question number 6 from Councillor Mrs S. Perks to the Cabinet Member for Learning and Culture.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Perks. I firstly need to emphasise that the proposals do not seek to establish a volunteer-run youth service in the Vale of Glamorgan. The service will continue to be delivered by qualified professional youth workers. We have proposed changes to staff contracts to reduce the number of part-time posts. Currently, many youth workers have contracts of little as 3 hours a week. The changes will see fewer posts, but these will be for more hours. In order to enhance the service, part of the proposal is to develop the relationships with voluntary organisations and to support them to develop additional provision for young people in the Vale of Glamorgan. In order to ensure that the safety and well-being of all our young people is protected, the Council will develop partnership agreements or service levels agreement with any group who wish to deliver services. There will be an expectation that volunteers, supported by central services, will become registered, qualified and DBS compliant.
Supplementary question.
Thank you for your answer there. I do have very real reservations about volunteers running youth services, and I understand what you just said, that they won't be running them, but we were given to believe that they would be running certain youth clubs within the Vale. My concern is, and my supplementary is, do we really feel that it's a risk worth taking having volunteers who aren't EWC registered and not subject to the code of conduct or the fitness to practice? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perks. I think, again, alluding to my first answer, we will be ensuring our youth officers that whosoever volunteers but we work in these services will be qualified, they will be DBS checked and deemed suitable. We would not be putting forward any provider that we feel didn't act in accordance with the service we'll be providing direct ourselves.
Thank you. Question 7 is from Councillor Mark Wilson to the Member for Neighbourhood Services and Transport.
Madam Mayor, Councillor Wilson. Like other councils in Wales and England, the council recognises that there are a significant number of potholes throughout the local highway network this year as a result of the very poor weather experienced during March and April. Our officers are working diligently to address the defects and catch up on the backlog of damage caused by the winter period, utilising our appointed term contractor for repairs. The Council uses and applies sound and well-practiced asset management techniques to maintain the highway in a safe condition. To achieve this, we inspect the whole of the Council's local highway network on a regular and scheduled basis, depending on the class and characteristics of the particular road. The Council is currently investigating mobile working arrangements to make this inspection regime process more effective and increase the time that inspectors are on the highway undertaking these essential inspections. The Council also continually reviews its contracts with external suppliers to ensure that the most efficient rates and prices are obtained for works undertaken, and that experienced contractors are appointed that are able to innovate in the way they undertake works on the highway to maximise the available resources. I'm also pleased to confirm that the Council will be running its very successful Big Fill campaign again this year, visiting all wards within the Vale to proactively identify potholes with public assistance and then deal with them quickly and efficiently, concentrating on individual areas each time. I would urge members to keep a close watch on our website for dates to be released when we will be in your ward area. Finally, I can also confirm that the Council has a significant budget in excess of 2.4 million for highway maintenance improvement works this year to undertake planned maintenance, including resurfacing, surface dressing and micro-asphalt treatments. This is to improve the overall condition stroke quality of the roads and to assist in preventing the formation of potholes in the future.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you very much for your reply, Cabinet Member. What I would like perhaps is statistics for each ward on number of potholes filled between 2004 and 2018.
I will speak to our officers and check whether that information is readily available. I'm sure you can have it if it is readily available. If it involves a considerable amount of work, then I wouldn't like to take them away from inspecting the areas.
Thank you both. Moving on to question number 8 from Councillor Wilson to the Cabinet Member for Neighbourhood Services and Transport.
Councillor Wilson, a shorter reply this time. The previous water fountains were provided via grants, and the Neighbourhood Services team is keen to provide similar facilities at other green flag parks if further grant funding becomes available. In addition, the proposals for new cafe facilities in some of our parks will give access to free drinking water to users of the park, and operators will be encouraged to sign up to the free water information websites.
Supplementary, Councillor Wilson.
Can I thank you for your reply, Cabinet Member, with that. Will the Vale of Glamorgan Council follow Penarth Town Council's initiative and promote free water use and promote the Refill app?
I'm keen to look at any proposals to look at reducing plastic and supplying free water, and certainly we're looking, if you consider what we're doing in this council on things like plastic and containers, you can see that at the last cabinet meeting we took on board the report which came from Scrutiny Committee on that.
Thank you. Moving on to question number 9 from Councillor Ian Johnson to the Cabinet Member for Neighbourhood Services and Transport.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Johnson. A report was considered by Cabinet on the 16th of April 2018, which agreed to extend the scope of the Improving Transport in Dinas Powys Welltag Stage 2 study as a result of a request made by Dinas Powys Community Council. As a consequence of this request, and the extension of scope to include additional traffic surveys and potential routes for the Dinas Powys bypass, the timescale for consultation of the Stage 2 findings has been slightly delayed, and it is now likely that a Stage 2 consultation event will be held shortly before the summer recess.
Supplementary from Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. As a Barry councillor, our residents here in Barry, our commuters, will be one of the main benefactors from Dinas Powys bypass, so we are supportive of that. Could you tell us what progress has been made in securing funding with regard to this project, and will that information be available at the time of the Stage 2 Welltag study report findings?
I'm sorry, with Councillor Jarvie coughing, I missed the last piece of your question then about funding.
I hope Councillor Jarvie is fine. Councillor Thomas. What progress has been made regarding securing funding for the Dinis-Powys bypass, and when will that information be available? Will it be, for example, available at the same time as the Stage 2 report in the summer?
The council, if you will recall, the cabinet report that came forward is paying extra money for the study to be extended, and of course the funding will depend on how far the well tag study goes in future. But at the moment we will wait for the well tag stage 2 report when it goes to cabinet later this summer.
Question number 10 from Councillor Dr Ian Johnson to the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Regulatory and Legal Services.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks for your question. What's up? Phase 1, this is about cellar safety, this question. Phase 1 of the cellar safety and beverage gas safety in hospitality intervention included a number of national businesses such as Brains, the brewery, Mitchells and Butlers, Stonegate, Green King, some of which had pre-existing primary authority partnerships in place. In addition to these companies rectifying deficiencies in the pubs visited throughout Bridgend, Cardiff and the Vale, they have subsequently modified their corporate policies and procedures and their control measures for cellar safety, and are in the process of rolling out these improvements across the rest of Wales and the UK. Brains has additionally committed to carrying out confined space risk assessments and to install carbon monoxide monitors across its tenanted estate in addition to its managed houses. The company has recognised that this topic area is very technical and tenants will need support to secure compliance with their legal requirements. Officers from Shared Regulatory Services have also liaised with a local beverage gas cylinder supplier about this project intervention. This gas supplier, which currently has approximately 2,000 clients, has subsequently produced a cellar safety pack, which includes an asphyxiation risk calculator, guidance on safe working practices, emergency procedures to follow in the event of cylinder leaks, and they can also install carbon monoxide detectors and provide training to cellar staff. Officers from Shared Regulatory Services have additionally liaised with Newport Council and Health and Safety Executive concerning problems identified with a different beverage gas cylinder supplier. Potentially unsafe cylinders have been removed from the market. Measures have been taken to secure a higher level of compliance with the safety of cylinders being supplied by this particular company. The work of officers in the Shared Regulatory Services Health and Safety Enforcement team during phase 1 of this intervention has therefore secured improvements to the health and safety of a much wider audience of employees working in the hospitality sector across the UK than the number of actual visits would suggest. In the future, officers in the Communicable Disease and Health and Safety team of the Shared Regulatory Services Department have committed to inspecting a further 80 businesses as part of its 2018-19 work plan, specifically in relation to cellar and beverage gas safety. This topic area will also be included as a bolt-on topic when undertaking verification visits to all 24 golf courses throughout this area. Focus will be placed on independently operated pubs, nightclubs where CO2 cylinders are often used for special effects, and sports and social clubs. Thank you.
Supplementary from Councillor Johnson.
Sorry.
Thank you very much for that detailed response. I mean, like you, I was shocked and surprised that 100% every single establishment that was visited failed safety tests on this. I'm pleased to see the work that's taking place and it's being prioritised. Amongst these 80 additional businesses, etc., could the cabinet member confirm there will be a zero tolerance 0% failure rate in the 2018-19 year, and that any establishment which fails this will take the appropriate action to ensure that they do meet safety standards, to ensure their safety of their staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to question number... Oh, sorry. I did try, I'm sorry.
That's all right, Madam Mayor, thank you.
We need to get home.
Basically, you're agreeing with what I've said earlier, and I would assure you that the inspections will be as rigorous as possible. They are not purely to do with gas, the cellar safety inspections, but they do largely involve gas because of the danger of gas leaks in enclosed spaces. But there is also the problem of people falling down cellar trapdoors and so on and so forth, which that they will deal with and advise as best they can in accordance with the regulations and the legislation applicable. But it is a thing that the team generally are very concerned about and are, getting to grips with as best they can.
Thank you. Now we have question number 11 from Councillor Dr Johnson to the Executive Leader and Cabinet Member for Performance and Resources.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. The question is on universal credit. I can confirm that the Council is providing a range of support options for those individuals who have transferred or will be transferring to universal credit. The Department of Work and Pensions anticipate that vulnerable and complex customers will require additional support with the new benefit arrangements. Therefore, the Universal Support Delivery Locally framework has been developed to assist them. This is a partnership approach between the Council and Job Centre Plus. This framework enables local authorities to provide local support for universal credit claimants. It was introduced in the Vale of Glamorgan in February 2016 and was confirmed in a Memorandum of Understanding agreed by Cabinet in January 2016 with available funding from the Department of Work and Pensions. Under the Memorandum of Understanding, the Council provides advice and support to universal credit claimants, supports vulnerable customers and deals with more complex inquiries. The USDL requires the Council to provide support to Universal Credit Service Centre staff, advising on housing cost issues, using the local authority's skills in dealing with housing benefit claims. Provide personal budgeting support for claimants with complex needs, and in particular those who require personal budgeting advice support. Provide digital support for claimants to get online and stay online by identifying public internet sites and locations where trained staff can provide supported access. To work with Universal Credit Programme in preparing landlords for the implementation of Universal Credit, and manually process the local council tax reduction scheme where Universal Credit has been awarded. The Council is also administering the discretionary housing payments scheme. These payments can provide extra money when an individual or family needs extra help to meet housing costs. In the Vale, a total of £332,565 was awarded in discretionary housing payments during 2017-18. The Welsh Government grant for the year was £330,286. The Council has also been working hard to support affected tenants through the changes and to adjust its business planning to reflect the impact the changes are likely to have on its rental income. A number of specific initiatives and steps are being taken to manage the risk posed, including expansion of the money advice service, and that is that 3 money advisors have now been recruited, increasing the number of tenants that have been helped and increasing the range of specialist advice, including income maximisation and debt advice. Over the last 12 months, over 1,000 money advice sessions have taken place and have resulted in an additional £389,000 worth of income for tenants in additional benefits, backdates and grants. Awareness raising through a range of articles, newsletters and leaflets has been used to make tenants aware of the welfare reform changes and impacts. The messages have included the importance of getting online, opening a bank account and household budgeting. A financial inclusion group has been established, bringing together partners from a wide range of public and voluntary sector agencies to address emerging themes, such as the need to share information, communication and joint working. A multi-landlord group is also being set up to include the registered social landlords operating in the Vale to ensure consistency and partnership working. Improvements to the information held about tenants, including their personal circumstances, is helping the council to identify people who are likely to be affected by specific changes and enables us to target advice and assistance towards those who need it most. A tenancy ready project has been established to provide training, advice and support for new tenants in order to improve tenancy sustainment. A key part of this will involve assessing the financial capability of new tenants and ensuring they are able to pay their rent. The Rooms for You project, run in partnership with a local registered social landlord, involves converting existing properties into shared rooms for people under the age of 35, meaning the help they receive towards housing costs are sufficient to cover the rent. A number of properties have already been let on a shared room basis, and there are plans to increase the spaces available over the next year. And community investment initiatives are supporting people to get into employment, which ultimately reduces the reliance on benefits and the impact on welfare reform. Projects include coordination of training and work experience opportunities, digital inclusion and healthy living initiatives, and increasing tenants' knowledge, skills and confidence levels.
Supplementary, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Leader, for that response. There appears to be an awful lot of problems that may occur for our vulnerable constituents and for us as a local authority, but not a lot of benefit. I'm aware that you've met recently with the Secretary of State for Wales on other matters. Could you tell me if you've spoken to him with regards to the impact of welfare reform universal credit on the Vale of Glamorgan and suggested you might want to scrap this idea in totally?
I can confirm that I have spoken to the Secretary of State, but not about universal credit. I don't think it would be in his gift to scrap universal credit, and thankfully it's well above my pay grade as well. But all I can say is that we are doing everything we can to mitigate any detrimental effects that universal credit may have on residents in the Vale of Glamorgan.
Thank you. Question number 12 from Councillor Dr Ian Johnson to the Cabinet Member for Housing and Building Services.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. During the 2017 to 2018, the authority pledged to resettle 4 families and has successfully resettled 2 so far. That includes 4 adults and 6 children. That is in addition to the 4 families that arrived in 2016 to 2017, which included 9 adults and 10 children. I'm pleased to confirm that despite significant challenges, 2 additional units of affordable accommodation have recently been secured, and arrangements are being finalised with the Home Office to receive the remaining families before the end of June 2018.
Supplementary question, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you for that response. If I understood that correctly, then the target was 4 families. You've actually had 2. Does this not show that you are not succeeding in your targets? And can I hope, given the ongoing situation in Syria and the distress that many families find them in, that those 2 families will be added to the 18-19 target? Can you confirm that will be taking place?
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. As far as I'm aware, all the families that we promised to rehouse have been rehoused, and we are looking further to that with discussions that we've been having recently with the Home Office, and hopefully we might be able to accommodate a few more.
Thank you. Question number 13 from Councillor Collins to the Cabinet Member for Regeneration and Planning.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Collins. Very similar question to Councillor Johnson's question in February's Council, but I have a reply. The Council addresses vacancies in the retail centres in many ways. Its day-to-day maintenance of the town centre contributes to a healthy retail environment, supplemented by, for instance, our marketing and events programmes, including the ice rink last year and the Christmas market, delivered by traders and funded in part by the Council. The Council is keen to further help traders establish new events throughout the year and has funds available to support these. We also work closely in partnership with the traders in Holton Road, and at their request we are currently trialling the use of underused taxi bays for additional customer car parking. This was agreed through the Town Centre Forum, which was established to improve communication and inform initiatives. The Town Centre's Development Officer is in routine contact with traders, assisting with issues as they arise. For instance, a presentation was arranged for traders on the benefits and pitfalls of a business improvement district, which could generate additional revenue for promoting and improving the town centre. At the request of the traders, further information is being gathered by the council and a further presentation is planned. In respect of investment in the Castleland area, in which concluded in 2017, saw a direct council investment in commercial premises and residential property facility facelifts in Upper Holton Road. Highway and signage improvements, more than £2 million was invested in Holton Road under this programme, with 34 new shop fronts installed and 6 vacant shops converted to residential use. Some 7 new businesses moved into the improved properties. This comprehensive investment programme has transformed the area, making it more attractive to shoppers and hence retailers. No, I haven't finished yet. I've got another page. In the main retail centre, the ongoing Holton Road grant programme encourages property owners to improve the external fabric of buildings, bringing empty shop units back into beneficial use and improve access to vacant and underutilised upper floors, to encourage conversion to residential accommodation. Up to 75% grants are available through this programme. The project involves engagement with local businesses, landlords and property agents. Since the grant programme was launched in 2014, 6 schemes have been completed at 157 Holton Road, 12 to 14 Holton Road, 1 Regent Street, 86 Holton Road, 50 Holton Road and 80 Holton Road respectively. As a result of the grant funding, the empty shop units at 86 Holton Road and 80 Holton Road are now occupied by tenants. A further 4 schemes are currently on site at 3 Thompson Street, 51 Holton Road, 60 Holton Road and 74 Holton Road. Following the completion of the works, it is hoped that the empty shop units at 3 Thompson Street, 60 Holton Road, 74 Holton Road will soon be occupied by tenants. Further projects are in the pipeline for the forthcoming year. The council, having recently been successful in securing a further £80,000 in grant from Welsh Government to extend the programme. These improvements have considerably enhanced the town centre, increasing its attractiveness to shoppers. Welsh Government has launched its new TRI, Targeted Regeneration Investment programme, which will invest up to £44 million in South East Wales over 3 years. In a limited number of regeneration programmes, these will be identified in close collaboration with the Cardiff Capital Region City deal, and the council is already engaged in the process, having identified a gateway redevelopment opportunity for Barry Town Centre as a priority. There is also a wide range of advice, guidance and in some cases finance available to eligible businesses of all types in the Vale. The council's website sets out clearly where support can be found, whether it can be from the council or through many partner organisations. In addition, on the 16th of April, Cabinet considered and agreed to a proposal to adopt High Street Rate Relief Scheme for shops and businesses situated on our high streets. You will note that this report is elsewhere on the agenda. The High Street Rate Relief Scheme was introduced by Welsh Government in 2017-18 to provide financial support to high street businesses that have seen a large increase in their non-domestic rates following a national revaluation of business properties. And at the end of the previous year, Cabinet has agreed to adopt the Welsh Government scheme again, and in the current financial year to continue to support these businesses. To support businesses where possible, this reduction will be automatically applied to reduce the requirement for businesses to apply for the relief.
Thank you. Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Bird. Not entirely sure what a lot of that actually has to do with what I asked, but thank you very much. As you are aware from your excursions into town with Councillor Johnson not so long ago. There are a few vacant properties in there. How long is it acceptable for these properties to be vacant before the council does more than it has already? For example, Philco has been shut now for 4 months and it's prime retail space. How long does it need to be empty for?
Thank you, Councillor Collins. I agree entirely. It's a great shame that these shops are empty, but unfortunately, as a council, we have limited resources and effectiveness. I can assure you that we are working with the owners of these properties, trying to encourage and help and see if there's anything we as a council can do to get these shops relet or used for other purposes. I did meet with your colleague. We had a walk around. I've had one meeting with our town centre manager, and I have another one in a fortnight's time, going through the various issues that we brought up. So I agree, it is a great shame. I hate to see empty shops, especially in the centre of town. And I will do all I can, but unfortunately this council has little powers over privately owned premises.
Question 14 from Councillor Collins to the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Regulatory and Legal.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Collins. This question is headed Barry Docks Incinerator. Shared Regulatory Services has received approximately 70, that's 70, service requests since the beginning of September last year. These service requests include inquiries and complaints relating to alleged nuisances from noise, smoke and light from the biomass facility on Wyndham Road, Barry. Some of the complaints relating to smoke have been referred to Natural Resources Wales to investigate, as these would be a matter for them to enforce under the environmental permit that they issued. Some residents who have complained about noise and lighting issues to Shared Regulatory Services have given access to officers to witness and assess the alleged nuisances and the noise and light possibly emanating from the biomass site at night. Investigations continue, and therefore it wouldn't be appropriate for me to make further comment at the moment. However, any evidence collected by Shared Regulatory Services may be shared with partner agencies such as Natural Resources Wales, NRW, and our planning colleagues if it is considered relevant to do so. Thank you.
Supplementary question, Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor. By the way, it's Woodham Road, not Wyndham Road. Just thought I'd point that out. How can you actually reassure me, in fact, how can you reassure my constituents that you are actually prioritising this issue when there wasn't even anything in your recent report to Cabinet regarding the associated concerns and problems with the incinerator?
What I can tell you is this. The Council has recently taken delivery of 2 solar-powered AQ mesh air quality monitors, and they're shortly going to be installed on lamp columns, one in Dockview Road and the other in close proximity to Holton Road School. The monitors will assess air quality 24 hours per day and feed data back wirelessly to our offices in 15-minute intervals. Air quality data will then be made available to members of the public via the SRS website. Barring no unforeseen technical issues, it's hoped that these units will be fully operational and providing publicly available air quality monitoring data within the next 4 weeks. So I hope this assures you that we actually have been doing something. Thank you.
Moving on to question number 15 from Councillor Hodges to the Executive Leader and Cabinet Member for Performance and Resources.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Hodges, for the question. Rubicon Heritage was selected to complete the archaeological work following a public tender process, and they arrived on site in March 2017. During the course of the dig, a wide range of significant finds were made dating back from prehistory around 3,500 BC, 3,500 BC, through to the Roman period of the 1st to the 4th centuries AD. These included more than 450 sites of burial or cremation, a large quantity of prehistoric and Roman pottery, prehistoric flint tools, including beautifully made arrowheads, and Roman metal artifacts such as brooches. The finds are currently being analysed, and the results of that should offer the local community a fascinating insight into the area's previously hidden past. The main dig site has its origins in the Neolithic period, a time in early prehistory, and was probably a ritual landscape, meaning it was used for ceremonies. This area was then modified a number of times during a period of use spanning more than 3,000 years. A major event in its history was the construction of a large Bronze Age barrow within which bodies were buried. This took place throughout later prehistory and possibly into the Roman period, suggesting the site was an important focus for local communities over many centuries. During the course of the excavation, further notable sites were discovered, including other prehistoric Bronze Age burial mounds and cremations. A later Iron Age settlement enclosure with roundhouses and a Roman metalwork site that involved iron smelting and smithing. Further investigations of a Roman villa previously excavated in 1960s and 70s also took place. The intention is that on completion of the post-excavation reporting on the finds from the site, they will be deposited with the National Museum of Wales in Cardiff, who might use them for research and exhibition purposes.
Supplementary, Councillor Hodges.
Thank you, Leader. I'm grateful for that, and I can see you share my excitement with the area. Is there potential for a reappraisal of the route to incorporate the existing finds into showcased aspects of the road development to further the history, culture and heritage of the Vale of Glamorgan?
Thank you, Councillor Hodges, for the question. I don't think there's any chance of rerouting the new road. I think all of the work has been done that needs to be done, and everything has been catalogued, as I said, and recorded. And the route of the road is the route of the road.
Question number 16 from Councillor Hodges to the Cabinet Member for Learning and Culture.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Hodges, for your question relating to Welsh medium education in our 21st century schools. Welsh Government has set out a number of criteria linked to the Band B of the 21st century schools programme, which must be reflected in proposals put forward by the local authority in order to secure funding. School provision is dependent on demand, school capacities, forecasted need and Welsh Government priorities, including but not limited to the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, Welsh in Education Strategic Plans, Welsh Promotion Strategy, etc. The Council takes its commitment to Welsh in education very seriously and works closely with the Welsh medium schools and Welsh Government in providing support and planning for the future. Welsh Government's Cymraeg 2050, seeking to facilitate 1 million Welsh speakers by 2050, calls for a proactive approach in promoting and generating new demand for Welsh language education. And this ethos is reflected within the Vale's WESP and its 21st Century Schools programme, and the priorities set against the Learning and Skills School Organisation and Access Department. To date, we have a very successful track record on supporting and growing Welsh medium education, and we are confident in the long-term strategy to continue this trend within our communities.
Councillor Hodges.
Thank you for that, Bob. Does the Cabinet Member agree that the only way to reach Welsh Government's targets for the Vale of Glamorgan is through the extension and expansion of bilingual schools? Therefore, what consideration has been given to the new proposed school at the waterfront being a long overdue replacement for Ysgolson Barrack, a school without kitchen facilities?
Thank you, Councillor Hodges. Can I take in two parts your supplementary? The first one on the commitment to Welsh medium education. Let's extend it a bit more. We are looking at, obviously, secondary education by improvements in Band B, which amount to £19 million in Ysgol Bro Morgannwg. We're also looking at provision for increased provision of Welsh medium education in Cowbridge, And of course, as you're aware, the situation as far as a barrack and High Street and the new waterfront school are all linked. And to be honest with you, at the moment, we really have to go out with a document on a proposal for the waterfront school. In that proposal and consultation, decisions will be obviously put forward whether it should be Welsh medium or English medium. It's dependent on satisfying Welsh Government on a business plan, first of all, to secure funding. It's also depends on Section 106 money and also the opinion of the public and the demand for what medium of education. I'm rather loath to sort of put any commitment because I can't, and I'm sure you knew as the ex-chairman of the Scrutiny Committee on Learning and Culture, we're not in it to guess, but every consideration will be given to Welsh and English medium education such that both can be catered for. And I do agree with you, the situation in Ibarra is not satisfactory, not having schools, meals, kitchens, and it's something which entailed in this provision we will be looking at. Thank you.
Question number 17 from Councillor Hodges to the Cabinet Member for Neighbourhood Services and Transport.
Madam Mayor, Councillor Hodges, this administration has identified £2.436 million for highway resurfacing for this financial year. We allocate this funding based on a technical assessment of highway condition. Often when highway deterioration is a consequence of periods of very cold ground temperatures, the lesser and more rural highway routes can be disproportionately affected. As you well know, the Council has a comprehensive 3-year resurfacing plan built on data from highway inspections and other technical assessments such as a scanner, which is a surface condition assessment for the national network of roads. However, there may be minor local routes which could currently be borderline in our programme, but which town and or community councils feel are very important locally. Though all routes put forward would have to be subject to a further technical assessment, this information could assist our engineers in determining the final programme. Now, I toyed with the idea of writing to specific town and community councils, perhaps those in most rural areas, seeking their views on the worst affected routes in their areas. However, as it would likely to be determined illogical or unfair to select only certain councils, and of course it could lead to complaints of unfair treatment, I decided to write to all 26, explaining in some detail what I was looking to achieve by their inputs. I've received many responses from town and community councils who have put forward routes for inclusion in the programme. Disappointingly, the only council to have responded and not included any routes is Barry Town Council. I would very much hope that Barry Town Council's position will not result in any disservice to the good people of Barry, and I will continue to consult with them on important matters of joint concern in the future, despite their position in this case.
Supplementary question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Cabinet Member. The reason I put this question is because Barry Town Council felt, and I believe correctly, aggrieved by the level of impetus being put into this. If the network system in the Vale of Glamorgan is being properly checked, number one, why do you need to ask us? And number two, I like to think that councillors automatically send up information to you anyway. We felt that in the timescale allotted to us to respond, we felt as a council covering 45% of the population of the Vale, 51,000 people and 8 wards, totally unable to comply with your answer to name 3 roads.
Yes, what is the question, please, Councillor Hodges?
What do you think of that?
Can I say, Councillor Hodges, you are aware that a large proportion of the roads in your area are already covered by our scanner survey and already included in our programme. We're putting this additional money in, the rural roads in a poor state of repair, and I'm amazed that you criticise me for consultation, because in the past you've been the one to say we ought to do more and more consultation.
Thank you. Question number 18 from Councillor Bailey to the Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Bailey. The question is on the proposals for local government reorganisation. A report on the Green Paper will be presented to Cabinet in May, and that will set out the response to the Green Paper. All members will also know that a briefing session is planned for the 9th of May on this issue. That said, my own view is that this is an unnecessary, unwelcome and unwarranted distraction. And I say this for a few reasons. My main focus is on delivering vital services to our communities and residents, and I'm sure that is the main focus of the whole of this council, and despite significant pressures and budget challenges. This latest in a long run of consultations is yet another distraction when we should all be focusing on doing what we do best, delivering vital services. The previous Cabinet Secretary for Local Government and Finance promised a period of stability so that local councils could continue to delivering vital services to residents and communities without the uncertainty and demoralising impacts of another debate on a flawed plan of reorganisation. Those promises clearly now count for nothing. The consultation again harps back to the Williams Commission report, which in itself was flawed, as it did not even consider the role and form of the health boards in Wales. There seems to be a flawed assumption that big is better. It is clear to me, and hopefully everyone in this chamber, that big is not always better. We are a mid-range authority in terms of area and in terms of population, but we are consistently high-performing despite significant pressures and poor financial settlements from Welsh Government. Despite year-on-year cuts to our funding, we continue to outperform larger councils. Welsh Government has continually pressed for larger councils, despite the fact that there is firm and indisputable evidence that size is no measure of performance. We are already working collaboratively in key areas, such as school improvement, social care and health, and the city deal. We also have been at the forefront of delivering shared services, as in the case with audit and regulatory services. More locally, we work with community groups and organisations, and we are able to do this successfully because of our size and our connection with local communities. On the issue of mergers, I have said before that there is absolutely no good reason to merge the Vale of Glamorgan Council, consistently rated as the highest performing local authority in Wales, with the City of Cardiff Council. The Vale of Glamorgan is a very different place to Cardiff, both geographically and culturally. It has very different characteristics and needs than that of the capital city, and this is something the Welsh Government still fails to understand, even after several years of debate and challenge by this council. The Green Paper indicates that the Welsh Government recognises that current funding arrangements for local authorities are unsustainable. However, forced mergers with huge upfront costs and massive disruption to vital services are not the solution. As has always happened in the Vale, and in closing, I call on this chamber to unite to protect the future of the council and the Vale of Glamorgan itself.
From Councillor Vince Bailey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Leader. You made the point about big is better, and anyone who's aware of the effects of the Welsh Government's reorganisations of the Welsh NHS will know that that certainly doesn't always prove to be true. These are the third major set of proposals that have been brought forward by the Labour Government in the last 3 years. It's causing huge uncertainty, as we know. The Minister said the process will be voluntary, and yet he's already drawn up a hit list, which includes Cardiff and the Vale merging. Now, to complicate things further, we have an empty vessel of a First Minister who's going to float along until Christmas before a new First Minister arrives, and the new First Minister may well take a different view again, which could make things even worse. And in the absence of that certainty from the Assembly, from the Welsh Government, will you once again join me reaffirming our opposition to any proposals that would lead to concreting over our beautiful green spaces, unnecessary overdevelopment, and the Vale effectively becoming a suburb of Cardiff?
Thank you, Councillor Bainter. I think the easy answer to that is yes, I will. As we all know, there are changes happening in Welsh Government. The first candidate to put his name forward for the leadership was the Minister, which gave us the promise that we would have stability, 22 front doors and work in collaboration, which is what we're all doing and what we would all like to keep. We're not against mergers if councils voluntarily want to merge, but I don't think it should be forced upon us. And yeah, I do concur with what you said, and I think probably everybody in this chamber does as well. That the Vale, and it's not being not wanting to be a turkey voting for Christmas. I genuinely believe that the Vale is better served by a Vale Council than it would be by a larger council incorporated in Cardiff, and I will certainly fight all I can to maintain that.
Thank you both. Question number 19 from Councillor Vince Bailey, again to the leader.
Losing my way here. This is a second question on council tax exemption for care leavers. And I'd like to thank Councillor Bailey for his question. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank him for raising the issue before Christmas, which led to, as I outlined in my previous answer, confirm that Cabinet is considering a report to agree this exemption on the 30th of April. That report is public now, and people are quite free to have a look at that. And as I also said before, if approved, the exemption will apply to those care leavers living in the Vale of Glamorgan between the ages of 18 and 25. And the report also proposes that the decision to grant this exemption will be backdated to the 1st of April 2018. And I'd also like to confirm in the answer to Councillor Wilkinson's supplementary that we will, as a council, do everything we can to identify those people who would be eligible for this. It may not be possible in every case, but we will do everything we can to identify the people eligible and signpost them in the right direction.
Thank you. Question number 20, also from Councillor Bailey, to the Cabinet Member for Neighbourhood Services and Transport. Question 20.
Madam Mayor, Councillor Bailey, I've probably addressed this question in part by my response to the earlier questions this evening. As advised, a sum of over 2.4 million has been made available for highway resurfacing and treatment for this financial year, and funding will be allocated through the Council's 3-year resurfacing plan, which will be subject to Cabinet approval shortly.
Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Cabinet Member. You'll recall some cynicism in certain quarters in this chamber when the Road Resurfacing Fund was first announced. I hope they'll now welcome this additional funding to improve our roads. It wasn't long ago that the state of our roads would have been one of the most common concerns raised by local residents, but I'm sure people will agree that there's progress being made on that backlog of repairs that you inherited last May. What assurances, here coming to the question now, what assurances can you give this council that road resurfacing will continue to remain a top priority for the administration?
Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. We appreciate that road surfacing, this extra money will only partly continue to do the work which we actually require, and more funds are necessary. I will continue to press during the year, looking forward to the following financial year, for continually to put in more funds towards our resurfacing programme, and I'm sure I'll have the support from my Cabinet colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Question 21 from Councillor Bailey to the Cabinet Member for Regeneration and Planning.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Currently, there is an allocation of £83,543.75 in Section 106 Community Facilities money received from the redevelopment of the former Ysgol Maes Dyfan, allocated to the proposed community building on Cemetery Road, in addition to the 40,000 capital monies which the Council has allocated. Should the scheme at Cemetery Road not progress to the award of contract, any reallocation of Section 106 contribution would need to be in accordance with Section 106 protocol for implementation, and there would be then ward member consultation with the relevant and relevant cabinet member consultation and local ward members. This would only be in the event of the project for the community centre failing, and any reallocation will be required to be within the vicinity of the development site.
Thank you. No. Question number 22 from Councillor George Carroll to the Cabinet Member for Neighbourhood Services and Transport.
Madam Mayor, Councillor Carroll, I'm delighted to be able to advise that the works to implement LED lanterns across the standard residential street lighting infrastructure areas commenced on site in early March 2018, and the work is progressing well, with full completion likely to take some 14 weeks, finishing in June 2018. Prior to the commencement of works, officers spent significant time and effort procuring preferential contracts for both the purchase and the installation of the LED lanterns. This has meant that the most advantageous products and up-to-date LED technology has been purchased. All ward members were provided with a detailed street-by-street schedule of the works programmed to fit the new LED lanterns in their wards in February 2018. The works will see over 5,000 conventional street lighting lanterns replaced by more efficient LED alternatives, which will be dimmed by 50% between midnight and 6 AM, meaning increased illumination times and an end to part-night lighting in these areas. This project will reduce the Council's ongoing maintenance and repair costs for street lighting, as LED lanterns can last for 20 to 25 years or 100,000 hours compared to conventional lighting, which only has a lifespan of 3 to 6 years. Further works to plan and procure the necessary conversion of ornamental and bespoke street lighting apparatus in residential streets to LED lanterns will commence on completion of the works in June 2018. In addition, the Council has been successful in applying for Salix loan funding to replace all remaining conventional street lighting to LED within the next 2 years, and work is progressing to establish a programme for this work, which mostly involves lighting on our main highway routes.
Councillor Carroll.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and I thank the Cabinet Member for his answer and indeed for the work that he and the Council have done to oversee the rollout of this project. In my ward, residents are able to benefit on the whole from the new lights, but there have been a number of, or a few issues I should say, namely a couple of residents finding their houses are now effectively floodlit throughout the night as a result of the angle at which the new lights have been installed. Would the Cabinet Member provide an update on the action that's being taken to deal with these issues to ensure that everyone across the Vale can enjoy the benefits of the new LED lighting schemes?
Yes, Councillor Cowell. We've had very few complaints so far, and our officers have obviously followed up on those. There are various ways in which we can deal with this. We can put baffles on our lights. With the new LED lanterns, we can actually change the direction of the light itself. And of course, we have the opportunity, if necessary, of dimming the lights even further. But we take all complaints into consideration and make sure we follow them up.
Thank you both. Question number 23, last one from members, from Catherine MacArthur to the Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor MacArthur. Question is on Syrian refugees. I must respond by saying that I'm extremely disappointed with the language used by Stephen Doughty MP in his statement to Parliament, which implies the authority has deliberately sought to obstruct the community sponsorship application from Croeshow-Penarth. I remind members that the authority is duty bound to ensure that each application is sufficient and sustainable, and that the needs of the vulnerable refugees can be fully met over the long term before it can consent to an application progressing further. This obligation is set out clearly in the guidance issued to local authorities in pursuance of assessing each community sponsorship application. Each submission must be assessed on a case-by-case basis and allowing for regional differences. The authority account for both the demands on local resources and the capacity of its statutory service providers. In this regard, the authority has made every effort to expedite the due diligence required to consent, and there has been no deliberate attempt to frustrate the process despite the allegation. This authority is fully and positively committed to assisting Syrian families, having already provided refuge for 6 families and a commitment to provide additional units this year. We welcome the efforts of our community partners to increase that provision, but we must ensure that such schemes are sustainable and that services are available to deliver the necessary support to those families. Furthermore, I am aware that a draft resettlement application submitted to the Home Office by Citizens UK mistakenly stated that consent had already been given. This incorrect assertion has placed considerable pressure on the authority from the community sponsors and Citizens UK and is not consistent with the collaborative partnership approach envisaged by the Home Office. I have been briefed by officers leading on the process, and I can confirm that a meeting with Croeshoe-Penarth Community Sponsorship Group was held on 20th of April to evaluate the resettlement plans, which have been updated following stakeholder consultation. This meeting with the regional panel, including statutory partners from both the Vale of Glamorgan Council and Cardiff Council. Further to this meeting, a Cabinet report will be submitted outlining the findings that a decision can be made on the Croeshoe-Penarth application. And can I say I'm hoping that this report will come to Cabinet very soon.
Thank you, Leader. No supplementary. Moving on to agenda item 9, which is the questions from the public. And question 1 is from Mr. Gethin Punter. Is Mr. Punter here this evening? No. Okay. Can we just have the answer to the question then, please, from the Cabinet Member for Learning and Culture?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As a result of successful cuts to the funding, the Council receive an increase in cost pressures in areas such as social care and education. It is incumbent on us to ensure that all funding is utilised effectively to sustain service provision. You might be aware that many council services have been reviewed as part of the Council's Reshaping Services programme to ensure we can continue to provide good quality services in the future within reduced funding availability. A review of the youth service showed that it would not be possible to retain dedicated youth centres in the future. The centre in Lantwick Major is the last remaining dedicated centre in operation in the Vale of Glamorgan. The service will continue to be delivered in the area through the use of the Council's tailor-made youth bus, which has proved very popular with young people in the area.
Thank you, Councillor Penrose. Question number 2 is from Mrs. Frances Reid. Is Mrs. Reid here? No. And it's to the Cabinet Member for Learning and Culture.
In the current financial year, £4.2 million has been delegated to schools to meet the needs of children and young people with additional learning needs in mainstream schools. Of this 4.2 million, 2.39 million is allocated to schools based predominantly on the number of pupils identified as being on the school's additional learning needs register. There is also a smaller allocation based on pupil numbers and pupils eligible for free school meals. This funding is used by schools to meet the needs of the majority of pupils with additional learning needs. For pupils with a higher level of need, there is an additional needs fund of 1.4 million. To access this additional funding, schools are required to make a request to a panel consisting of head teachers, local authority officers and senior specialist teachers. The panel will then decide the level of funding allocated to the school based on set criteria. In addition, the local authority also provides £388,000 to fund specialist resource bases attached to mainstream schools. These bases provide additional specialist provision to meet the needs of pupils with significant difficulties in a number of areas, such as alternative learning needs, such as complex learning difficulties and hearing impairment. As can be seen, the 4.1 million in funding supports a graduated response to need. If children and young people do not meet the criteria for higher levels of support, they will still be able to access a level of support appropriate to their needs. If parents feel that their child is not receiving sufficient support, they should initially discuss this with the school, who can liaise with the local authority officers to address their concerns. If those concerns persist, then parents can write directly to the local authority requesting a statutory assessment of their child's special educational needs. Such requests are given due consideration by the local authority.
Thank you, Councillor Penrose. Question 3 is from Mrs. Frances Valencia. Is she here? Would you like to read your question out? Hang on a sec. We'll bring the mic up for you.
Do you want to use this one? Because that one's mapped to the member side.
Thank you. Yeah, hold it.
Does the council feel that sending an independent representative to the student school council at Llancarvan Primary to hand out sweets to the children, presenting the migration proposal to them, and then asking them to choose between supporting or opposing it, without first informing parents of the visit, is an impartial, transparent and representative process to glean children's feedback on the proposal? And will the fact that almost all of the children voted against the school migrating be taken into account going forward, and if so, how?
Thank you, Mrs. Valencia, for your question. The Council has an obligation to make arrangements to consult with children as part of any proposal in accordance with the School Organisational Code. This process is conducted through the School Council and was arranged in advance with the head teacher. The consultation event was undertaken by an independent specialist consultant, and it offered an opportunity for children to learn about the proposal and feed into the outcome of the consultation. A report on this consultation event and its outcomes will be included in the consultation report on the proposal. In addition to this information, I can confirm that I have been advised that the facilitator had the approval of the school to hand out sweets to the children. A teacher's aide was also present at the event to provide support where necessary, and the head teacher was also in attendance for part of the event.
Thank you, Leader. Question number 4 has been withdrawn, so we'll move on to question number 5. And the question is from Dr. Alexander Barrett. Would you like to read your question out?
Proposals in the Western Vale Primary Provision consultation involve changes to primary school catchment areas which will have a knock-on effect for secondary catchments and admissions policies. The consultation document talks only about transitional arrangements for existing pupils. What other plans does the Council have for secondary catchments and admissions policies in the Western Vale?
And that question goes to the Executive Leader and Cabinet Member for Performance and Resources.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Dr. Barrett. There are no current plans to reconfigure catchment areas within the Vale of Glamorgan other than as contained in this proposal, although a catchment area review is planned for later this year. Any future proposed changes to catchment areas and admission policy, including any agreed transitional arrangements, would be subject to public consultation. I can advise you that the Council consults on its admission arrangements between January and March every year, and the agreed policy is published in the Parental Guide to School Admissions document, which can be found on the Council's admissions page.
Thank you. Moving on to question number 6, which is to the Cabinet Member for Learning and Culture, from Mr. Lee Lapham. Is Mr. Lapham here? Would you like to read your question, sir?
What research was undertaken to determine the likelihood of the 350 allocated houses on the northeastern land at Roos ever being developed? And secondly, what detailed reports were undertaken to ascertain the future expansion potential of the existing Roos primary site?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr Lappin, for your question. The land to the north of the railway line in Roos is allocated in the Council's adopted Local Development Plan 2011 to 2026 for 700 dwellings. The allocation has come forward in two parcels, the land to the northwest and the land to the northeast. The land to the northwest of the railway is currently under construction by Taylor Wimpey. The land to the northeast of the railway line has been granted outline and to reserve matters consent for 350 dwellings. The reserve matters to this site have now expired and the developer will need to resubmit a new application if they want to pursue developing the site. Given the allocated status of the site, the Council anticipate the site coming forward for development during the planned period, that is before 2026. The progress of all allocated sites will be monitored annually via the annual monitoring report required to monitor the progress of local development plan and the annual joint housing land availability studies. The requirement for a new school was identified when preparing background evidence to support the local development plan. This reserve was jointly prepared by education and planning officers and suggested that given to the number of pupils generated by the 3 new developments in Roos, this warranted allocating land for a new school within the plan. Various options were subsequently considered and discounted, including the extensions to the existing primary school in Roos.
Thank you, Councillor Penrose. Question number 7 is from Mrs Catherine Kemp to the Executive Leader and Cabinet Member for Performance and Resources. Catherine, would you like to read it?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Leader, the eldest of the Llancarvan school buildings is a Victorian structure built in 1875 and recorded as a county treasure. Can you give an assurance that this historic schoolhouse will not be bulldozed as the school closes and the site redeveloped?
Thank you, Catherine, for the question. You will be aware that Llancarvan Primary School is situated within the Llancarvan Conservation Area and is identified in the Llancarvan Conservation Area Appraisal and Management Plan as a positive building, as it contributes to the character or appearance of the conservation area in a positive manner. I can also confirm that the building has been identified and included in the Council's County Treasures list. As such, any development proposal relating to the site would need to be considered in terms of the policies in place. For example, the requirement to preserve and, where appropriate, enhance the architectural and/or historic qualities of buildings or conservation areas, including locally listed buildings. I can assure you that there are no plans to develop or demolish the school site. I can also assure you that if this proposal goes ahead, any future planning proposals with regard to the school building would be subject to consideration of its status as a county treasure, alongside clear adherence to the policies and regulations in place with regard to buildings with this status.
Question number 8 is from Mrs Susan Taylor to the Executive Leader and Cabinet Member for Performance and Resources. Mrs Taylor?
Do you share our concern that council officers' characterisation of the Llancarvan Primary School closure as a migration is a cynical attempt to head off adverse publicity and avoid taking due regard to the specific factors in consideration of school closures described in the Code of Practice for School Reorganisation?
Thank you, Mrs Taylor. No, I do not believe that this is the case. The Council has been clear that this is a proposal to increase the capacity and age range of Llancarvan Primary School via the provision of a new school building. It is not proposing to close the school. If this proposal goes ahead, the pupils, staff and governing body of Llancarvan Primary School would transfer to the new improved school building, but the school would continue to deliver education with the additional provision of nursery education. This proposal has been put forward to address the existing and projected capacity concerns for Llancarvan and Roos primary schools, as well as providing 4.2 million of investment in a modern, fit-for-purpose school building which would enhance the teaching and learning experience at Llancarvan Primary School.
Thank you. Question number 9 is from Mr Stephen Parry to the Executive Leader and Cabinet Member for Performance and Resources. Mr Parry?
on the the consultation document on the proposal to reconfigure primary provision in the Western Vale, which includes the closure of Lancarvan Primary School, does not meet all the requirements of the Code of Practice for School Organisation. Among other things, it does not deal with the disposal of land, as it is required to do, and it does not contain costings with regard to the transporting of children to the new school. Can the Vale of Glamorgan Council explain this failure to comply with the requirements?
Thank you, Mr. Parry, for your question. And thank you for bringing this matter to my attention. As the proposal is at a very early stage, there have been no discussions on the potential transfer or disposal of land or buildings should the proposal proceed. However, the Council are fully aware of the County Treasurer's status of the current school building and would, of course, manage any future actions in line with the policies in place. An addendum to the consultation document, including this information, was circulated to prescribed consultees on the 13th of April 2018 in the interests of clarity. In terms of the provision of transport costs, these are only required in the event of a proposal on school closure. The consultation document does not propose to close the Lancarvan School, but rather migrate the school from its current site to a brand new building. References to transport matters are, however, contained within the consultation document.
Thank you, Leader. Question number 10 is from Mrs. Claire Parry to the Leader. Would you like to read your question, Mrs. Parry? Is she here? No. Leader?
Okay, the question is in relation to the local development plan formula. As I confirmed in response to an earlier question, the land to the northeast of the railway line has been granted outline and 2 reserved matters consents for 350 dwellings. The reserved matters for this site have now expired, and the developer will need to resubmit a new application if they want to pursue developing the site, given the allocated status of the site. The Council anticipate the site coming forward for development during the planned period, that is before 2026. The Council applies pupil yield factors on the number of units being built for a new development in order to generate anticipated numbers for each stage of education. At nursery level, this is calculated at 0.1 pupils per house. At primary level, 0.278 pupils per house, and at secondary level, 0.208 per house for 11 to 16-year-olds and 0.04 for post-16 pupils. For every 100 houses built, the Council would expect 10 nursery-aged children, 28 primary-aged pupils, and 21 secondary-aged pupils aged 11 to 16, and 5 post-16 pupils to be generated. The Council will factor in the demand for English, Welsh, and denominational education for the pupils generated based on existing demand within the area of a proposed development. These factors are calculated from census data of householders in the Vale of Glamorgan and are consistent with Audit Commission guidance. The factors are a tried and tested, accurate method of calculating the number of school places required for planning purposes as a result of housing developments of various types and sizes.
Question 11 from Mr. Matthew Valencia to the Leader. Would you like to read your question?
Yes, thank you. In a move that appears to be unprecedented for Vale of Glamorgan schools, the Council has described its proposal to close the village school in Llancarvan and move pupils to Roos as a migration. Does it believe, as that word implies, that a 210-place school on the edge of a suburban housing development is the same as a small school in a rural setting with an ethos to match?
Thank you, Mr. Valencia. The ethos of a school is created primarily by the staff, pupils and governing body, not the school building. This proposal seeks to transfer the school pupils, staff and governing body in its entirety to a new school building, which would have additional space to accommodate the additional children who will be living locally. The Council would look to sustain and build on the success of Lancarvan Primary School and support the school in its transition in order to ensure that, wherever possible, the character, ethos and positive aspects of the existing school are protected and reflected in the new site. Once again, I reiterate that we are not proposing to close Lancarvan Primary School. A school closure would require a separate process and would involve the redundancy or redeployment of all staff, the dissolution of the governing body, and a transfer of remaining pupils to alternative schools with places available. Instead, we are proposing to invest 4.2 million in a new building that will provide sustainability and sufficiency of school places in the area in the long term.
Thank you, Leader. Question number 13 from Miss Amelia Llewellyn Blakemore. 12.
It's okay.
12 from Andrew Llewellyn Blakemore.
The Code of Practice for School Organisations states in some areas a school closure could have implications beyond the provision of education. This may be a particular feature in rural areas. Kirsty Williams, Minister for Education, has stated small and rural schools play an important role in raising standards and extending opportunities. With this in mind, why is the Vale of Glamorgan Council proposing closing Lancarvan Primary School with its successful small rural school with a good Estin report and a improved traffic light system on the national school categorisation system?
Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Llewellyn-Blakemore, for your question. The Minister for Education, Kirsty Williams, issued a draft revision to the School Organisational Code in June 2017. This is expected to be laid down this June-July for implementation from the 1st of October 2018. The draft code contained proposals to protect rural and small schools and provided a designated classification list of rural schools in Wales based upon the National Statistics Urban-Rural Classification, covering England and Wales. This list would be used by councils to determine whether a school was considered rural or not. In terms of the classification guide in the School Organisation Code, no schools in the Vale of Glamorgan are classified as rural schools. Small schools are defined by the Audit Commission as a school with 90 pupils or less. In the case of Lancarvan Primary School, I can advise that the school is not considered a small school as it does not meet the definition with 106 pupils currently on the roll. There appears to be some confusion in this matter. The Council is not proposing to close Lancarvan Primary School, it is proposing to migrate the pupils, staff and governing body to a new school. The Vale of Glamorgan Council has no schools classified as small or rural in nature.
Question number 13 from Miss Amelia Llewellyn Blakemore.
Please could you let me know why you think it is necessary for us to have a new school when we're perfectly happy with the lovely school that we already have and has served the village well since Victorian times. It's a piece of history that should continue in the future.
Well done, thank you. Leader.
Thank you, Amelia, for your question. And you showed less nerves than I have tonight, I can assure you. And thank you very much for your question. We believe that this proposal is in the best interests of all pupils in the area, and it would ensure that there are sufficient school places for all of the children requiring one. If we do nothing, we know from our projections that Lancarvan and Roos Primary School would not be able to accommodate all of the children who will need a place in the school, a school place in the area. However, if we built another school in Roos and also kept Lancarvan Primary School open, we have concerns that this could create too many places, which would cause sustainability issues for Lancarvan Primary School. If this proposal is taken forward, the Council would wish to work closely with the pupils, parents, staff and governors to ensure that the history of the current building is honoured and truly reflected in the new school building. There are many ways in which this can be achieved, for example by transferring artwork, installations and also creating new murals and areas of interest that reflect a long and vibrant history of the school.
Thank you. Question number 14 from Mrs. Melinda Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
In preparing the community impact assessment and consultation document in relation to the proposal to reconfigure primary provision in the Western Vale, the Council accepts only that there may be a perceived impact upon the community of Llancarvan, Llanbethery and Llantrythid. This is not accepted. Please could the Cabinet Member provide evidence of the work undertaken to demonstrate that the risk of adverse impact upon the wider community has been properly taken into consideration?
Leader.
Thank you, Mrs Thomas, for your question. As with all education consultations, the initial information contained in the community impact assessment is sourced from information held within the council offices and at the school, as well as any other information identified in the initial stages of proposal development. As the consultation progress and information is received with regard to identified community impact, this is in turn fed into the final assessment documentation, which is then published alongside the consultation report. The Council does not seek to prejudge the impact of the community at the commencement of the consultation, but rather ensures it reflects that evidence received.
Question number 15 from Dr. Julie Highfield. Would you like to read your question?
Yes, please. Under current plans, pupils moved to Roos will no longer be in catchment for Cowbridge, but for Barry and Llantwit instead. The Council has sought to reassure parents that children already in Llancarvan will have priority when it comes to places in Cowbridge. Should the Council have a responsibility to explain more clearly that no guarantee of places can be given to these pupils, and that when the time comes for those children to go to secondary school, is it possible that no place in Cowbridge is available for some or all of them?
Leader.
Thank you, Dr. Highfield. A pupil's catchment school is identified by the child's home address, not their attendance at a particular school. The Council's published admissions arrangements confirm the criteria and process used in allocating school places. They rank residence in the catchment area and attendance at a feeder school as the highest criteria for allocation of a place, after pupils directed to the school due to their special needs or looked after status. These admission arrangements are published annually, and from the outset they state clearly that no guarantee can be given that a parent's first preference of school can be met. In terms of this proposal, the Council is committed to honour the feeder arrangements to Cowbridge for pupils who are on the roll at Llancarvan on the date of migration, should this proposal go forward. This being the case, Llancarvan pupils maintaining this feeder status will be in the same position as any other pupil attending one of the 10 primary feeder schools for Cowbridge and living in the catchment area.
Question number 16 is from Dr. Adrian Neal. Would you like to read your question, sir?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Does the Council feel that the community impact assessment, which was conducted prior to the consultation period, reflects the impact on the community, bearing in mind that it was put together without consulting the Fox and Hounds pub, St Cadoc's Church, Llancarvan Tennis Club, members of the local community, Llancarvan Community Cinema, the After School Club, the Village Hall and other local institutions?
Thank you. Leader.
Thank you, Dr. Neal. As with all education consultations, the initial information contained in the community impact assessment is sourced from information held within the school offices, the council offices and at the school, as well as any other information identified in the initial stages of proposal development. As the consultation progresses, the information is received with regard to identified community impact. This is in turn fed into the final assessment documentation, which is then published alongside the consultation report. The Council does not seek to prejudge the impact of the community at the commencement of the consultation, but rather ensures it reflects the evidence received. Sorry, that's the same answer to a question asked previously, but the question is very similar to the question that was asked previously.
Which takes us to agenda item 10 and 11. There are no urgent items. I would just like to thank you all very much for your attendance today, and especially for your questions, and I wish you all a safe journey home. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you.